How do you solve a problem like Nicola? There she is. Perhaps you call her bluff. Scotland's Commander-in-Chief, Emperor Sturgeon, has renewed her commitment this week to tear Scotland out of the United Kingdom. And whether it's Alex Salmond back in the day or Nicola Sturgeon now, deep down, I'm not sure these characters really believe in independence. You certainly wouldn't if you looked at the economic consequences. And Sturgeon is not a stupid woman. I suspect that Sturgeon and her ilk are a bit like the Anglican bishops who don't really believe in God, but have to keep waving the cross to keep the congregation happy. There is no economic, political, diplomatic, military or cultural benefit from the great nation of Scotland leaving the UK. It's a lose-lose situation. If you thought Brexit was a bit bumpy, just get your head around how Brussels would police the border between England and Scotland in the event of an independent Scotland joining the EU. And would the EU even take Scotland, given Scotland's debt-to-income ratio and the message it would send to other breakaway states like Catalonia in Spain? The case for Scottish independence raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. Firstly, what currency would Emperor Sturgeon use? The SNP glibly assume it will be the pound. Well, the Treasury will have something to say about that. Who will defend Scotland in the unimaginable scenario of a foreign attack? Particularly that Nicola wants to get rid of the nukes. This tartan pacifist that she is committed to getting rid of Trident, exposing Scotland at a time when monsters like Putin are rampaging across Eastern Europe and when China circles a sharpened pencil around a map of Taiwan. The golden promise of Scottish independence is EU membership. And I'll give it to Nicola, not literally, family show, but I will grant her that a majority of Scots indeed voted to remain in the EU. However, that the SNP wants sovereignty only to hand it over to Brussels shows how irrational and incoherent this plan is. No control of their currency, as they would have to take the euro. No control of their borders with Schengen. No control of their courts, plus huge monthly payments for the privilege of membership. It all doesn't add up. Talk about jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And the last time I checked, the EU isn't great with small countries. Exhibit A, Greece, who was skewered like a kebab by Angela Merkel and friends. What happens to democracy if Scotland leave? With Labour support at an all-time low, and with the brief Tory renaissance strangled at birth, you're looking at single-party rule under Emperor Sturgeon for decades. Scotland is an incredible nation of people with a rich and proud history. I had the joy and honour of living there for 4 years. Scotland has always punched above its weight, economically, culturally, and beyond. There is also the small matter of Scotland being one of the most beautiful countries on earth, boasting stunning landscapes and great global cities like Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Aberdeen. Scotland is as good as it gets. It's fan-dabby-dozy. But forgive me for being a bit cranky about the idea that Scotland leaves. An independent Scotland would be poorer, more divided, and of course, more woke. Don't forget, Emperor Sturgeon is responsible for a policy in which children as young as 5 may now be able to change their name or pronouns without parental permission. That's right, change their name or pronouns at the age of 5 without asking mum and dad. Civil servants have been ordered to write he, him, or she, her on their emails. They, them are having a laugh. And so-called hate crime and legislation to stop it is now so draconian that you could potentially get arrested for making an off-colour remark in your own home. Under the politically correct ideology of the SNP, the Holy Church of Woke, the likes of national hero Billy Connolly would be strung up and burned at the stake for his wonderfully naughty comedy. And Scotland is now the epicentre of extreme gender ideology, which denies the existence of biological sex. In Scotland, these days, God knows what you're packing under that kilt. Nicola Sturgeon is an extremely bright individual and perhaps the most talented politician of her generation. On the face of it, she played the COVID-19 crisis brilliantly, stealing a march on Boris on a regular basis, casting herself as the nation's saviour in a time of crisis, a steady hand at the tiller. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Scotland's COVID case and death rate was just as high, if not higher, than down south, in spite of stricter measures. The success of Freedom Day in England in July of last year was a source of colossal embarrassment to both Sturgeon in Scotland and Drakeford in Wales. Yes, indeed, cases fell following a lifting of restrictions in England. The more authoritarian approach taken by Sturgeon and Drakeford caused huge damage, and the data would suggest it failed. Well, an independent Scotland will make authoritarianism permanent. And don't be fooled by the electoral success of the SNP. They are sitting pretty on the electoral map, but that's due to the hopeless collapse of Labour and the Tories. But it doesn't mean that they're loved or respected by all. There's just no one else to vote for. And a vote for the SNP is not necessarily a vote for independence. Now, I mentioned that Scotland would be more divided if she left. And the reason why is because the country was split over IndyRef 1, and a Scottish departure from the UK would cement that divide. It's been reported, and many of you have written to me about this via email, that those who voted for Scotland to stay in the EU kept their views very quiet for fear of reprisals, attacks on social media, trouble at work or socially. And one particular viewer told me in an email that if you openly campaigned for Scotland to stay, you might get a brick through your window. That's how sectarian and toxic this has become. In the end, Scottish independence just makes no sense. The United Kingdom is the greatest political union in history. Great Britain is a beacon of diversity. It's the fifth biggest economy in the world, and it's a political, diplomatic, military and creative powerhouse. I'm not saying that Scotland wouldn't survive outside. Of course not. She will always prevail. But she would be weaker and poorer, as would England, Northern Ireland and Wales. You see, there's the point. We need each other. That's always been the beauty of the relationship, a reciprocal partnership that has provided economic and political stability for over 300 years. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. I'm tempted to call Nicola Sturgeon's bluff and grant her the referendum. Let her really sell what I'm calling Muck-Brexit. Given it's such a terrible idea, I just can't see how a majority of Scots would vote for it. The advantage of calling her bluff is that it would lance the boil of independence and kill this idea forever. And with that, likely, Emperor Sturgeon's political career. Because independence is the only thing she's got to offer. Outside of that, her only achievements are disastrous health outcomes, failing education policies, and appalling levels of drug addiction. Independence is Sturgeon's political fig leaf, behind which you'll find nothing. In the absence of independence, it will be immediately clear Sturgeon is the emperor with no clothes. The naked truth is that an independent Scotland would be a disaster for Scotland and a tragedy for the UK. And Nicola knows it. I do hope this bag pipes down.